Hey, Lioness, welcome to the show, Lioness Conversations, where we help women be brave, to lead with confidence and joy, and to find your path to the most meaningful work of your life. I'm your host, Jen Porter, leadership and empowerment coach for ambitious and heart centered women who are ready to change the world. You can find out more about my work and the Lioness community at jenportercoach.com. Today we have the one and only Leslie Silverman. Leslie is the unapologetically bold voice behind Hive 180, a brand transformation studio she co founded to help certified professionals break free from bland, blend in branding. With over 25 years of experience spanning Harper's Bazaar, New York City ad agencies, and her own entrepreneurial ventures, Leslie brings both creative edge and grounded strategy to every conversation. Known for her irreverent wit, no nonsense energy, and sharp strategic instincts, Leslie helps experts own their story and show up with clarity and confidence. She's especially passionate about guiding women who are ready to lead with vision, not just credentials. Whether she's on a podcast, in a client session, or sharing insights behind the scenes, Leslie empowers others to stop playing small and start positioning themselves with authority and alignment. Leslie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. I'm so happy to be here.
I think you're a soul sister because everything that you're talking about resonates with me. And I know we had to stop ourselves from our pre conversation because we were diving into all of these concepts that were just so compelling.
Just too
And we want
quick.
to share that with the audience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I felt that from the first time we connected.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks so much for making time to do this. And you know, the just to let people know, like this podcast is about celebrating women and the brave steps that they've made, the good work that they're doing in the world, but also so that listeners can realize that it wasn't always easy. You haven't just arrived and now you've figured everything out. You actually still have brave steps to take. And there's more to do. And so I want to share your story, where you are today, but also how you got there and then where you're headed in the future. So it's all about that brave lioness inside of us and helping that emerge, not just for us, but for others, because there's important work for all of us to do in this world.
Absolutely. And I think when we can be vulnerable and share some of our struggles that have led to our successes, just it gives permission. It's part of sisterhood. It helps build up others. And you never know when someone who is maybe can resonate with one of your lows and it gives them hope. It gives them that vision of, well, gosh, if she could overcome that, then I can too. And it's expansive and supportive to hear. So I am happy to be as vulnerable, open, and authentic as I can in sharing with your community my story.
Thanks, Leslie. So before we get into Hive 180, what I want to know is like I have this, so many people are struggling. Like there's a lot in the world that's hard, but there's a lot that's really good and there's a lot to love too. So I'm just curious as we start, what are the things in life that are really lighting you up right now?
Yeah, it's really foundational and might sound really simple, but it is huge and not something that I always prioritized. But my self care and making it a priority. I mean, I work out for longevity and wellness. And
Yes.
I really enjoy preparing healthy organic foods. I joined my neighborhood community garden this year. I've been growing my own vegetables. And so just, really sitting in meditation and making time for the foundational things that I can control. When the world is crazy and things don't really make sense and you don't know what to do and it can be overwhelming, those grounding things and tapping in are ways that I can approach life and my day from a grounded, happy place.
So
And, not in a Pollyanna way. I mean, I understand that bad things happen, but by taking a beat, taking a breath, and staying grounded. That's really helpful. I love music. I love, any kind of live music and dancing and moving my body and just, sort of letting loose a bit in that way is really supportive. So those are the couple things that come to
I
mind.
love that. And those things are simple and accessible to us, right? I've heard about grounding. Like grounding is here for me, but I think it just like went more down here when I heard you talk about those things because I I don't think I realized the connection between the ground and being grounded. I've heard it is what I'm saying. Like I've heard those things. These things
Yeah.
are good, like walk around barefoot on the grass. But when you talk about the food and the planting and the working in the earth, tilling the soil and working in the soil, I'm like that is so grounding, especially when things are spinning around us in the world and would love for us to get caught up in in the whirlwind and the
Yeah.
cycle of that.
Yeah. And also, being based in Colorado, I spend a lot of time in the woods. I love to hike and just get out there amongst what I affectionately call my tree friends. I've been known to hug a tree on occasion. Sometimes passerbys are unsure what's really going on, but you can feel their energy. It's real.
I love trees. Trees are deeply meaningful for me, and I think about sometimes I wish they could talk in a way that I could hear because
Right?
they have stories to share,
They
right? They've
do.
seen so much over years and years and years, way longer than our lifetime,
Yeah.
and they give us it gives us so much. I mean,
Yes.
from a physical standpoint, an emotional standpoint, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Colorado too, so, we get it. There's a lot to love here in Colorado with the outdoors. So tell me about Hive 180. What are you focused on in this season with your business?
Yes. So I have had quite an evolution in business, just completed year 9. So, starting year 10, I have one business partner. He is like my little brother. And we met working in a different environment that became not supportive and not aligned with our core values. There was not, trust, honesty, and teamwork happening in a way that was really supportive. And so part of what our whole mission and vision was birthed from, a really challenging time where we were like, we want more and we want to break away from that situation and launch on our own. And so that sort of became our business mantra, for our clients, is helping them break away. And so we are branding strategists and web developers. And the way we differentiate ourselves from a lot of other people who might seemingly offer the same service is that we say we're a partner, not a vendor. So I work with people who want to break away from their industry status quo in different ways. It doesn't mean you're leaving a bigger company to start on your own, but it could be that, or it could be, potentially you're a lawyer, let's say, and instead of offering, all the traditional legal approaches that you believe are status quo for your industry, you're like, I'm not wearing a navy blue suit and I want to help people in these ways. And I want to let my colorful vision of what my business is shine and not have to fit in the box of what I think my industry expects me to be. And so through our every client relationship with a strategy session where we just do a ton of listening, asking tons of questions. We call it a brand buzz. And we ask them so much, not just about, what their preferences are aesthetically, but what they want to accomplish. What are their pain points? What industry struggles are they having? What personal struggles are they having? What do they want their work life to look like? What types of ideal clients do they want to partner with? And a lot of times I don't think people realize that they have permission to answer that. You don't have to take every client that knocks on your door. When you're an entrepreneur, you can curate and call in the types of client relationships you want, regardless of what service it is that you're offering. So when we start from that really deep, authentic, connected, inspired space, we're then creating assets that are so aligned and so helpful for those business owners to then call in their ideal clients. When their clients come to their website or see their branding, they are unequivocally like, "This is for me." So that's what lights us up.
And why did you call it Hive 180?
That is a fun story. We didn't wanna just be in the box again with these companies that are like, Colorado web marketing or something super, straightforward like that. We wanted it to be sort of, creative and edgy and people to be like, "Ooh, you Hive 180." So for us, a hive is a flurry of activity, and then 180 is a new direction. So at the time that we started, we were excited and in a flurry of activity and just really vibing with like bees and hives and honey. And we play into the buzz and the, stickiness. And, we all need bees to survive. So a little bit of fun around that. And then, 180, just a new direction. It was a new direction for us. And that's what we wanted to bring, a new direction to our clients in the industry.
And I think about those we's in our life. I don't call them 180s, but that's what they are. When
Yeah.
we look back at the history of our own life, those are usually the milestones we're talking about, is when we made those 180 moves, whether it was internal, a mental shift, or, a geographic location shift. It could be anything like that. I want to go back to what you first said when you started describing your business and the transition that you made and why you made it. Because I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening, and there's a lot that want to be entrepreneurs. Like it's in them, but what I find is that it's scary, right? We have a hard time making that leap from where we are, even as painful as it might be. We know it, and it's at least it feels a little bit stable, even if we hate it. And yet there's something inside of us that calls us toward, gosh, what if? We have a vision, we have a dream, and it's inside of us, but the fear holds us back from actually accessing it and giving it a try. And most of that, if you boil it down, I mean, there's I guess people lean on the financial piece. It's like, I don't know how the financial piece is going to work, but it's actually something deeper within us that holds us back. So this is where I want to connect with you on on your story there. Because what I heard you say is things weren't supportive. Where you were, it wasn't a good environment for you to thrive. It wasn't working for you. And there were some things that were going on that weren't in alignment with your own values and ethics. And so, can you talk more about that particular part of the story? And what was it that got you to a place of like, I'm actually going to do something different? Because doing something different is not easy.
It's not easy. And, we we can settle, right, into the safety of what we know. And it is scary to take chances. And as humans, we can either say, okay, if I take this chance and it goes wrong, then all of these things. But what if we lean into the other side? What if we are greater and, better beyond our wildest dreams and imagination, right? And so I tend to lean into a cup half full outlook in life, even though I am practical and you do have to, survive and provide for yourself and all of that. But it was at a point where, hey, life is short and we were really unhappy. And basically my now business partner and I, were our unhappiness was growing and growing day by day. And he actually came to me and said, "You know what? I can't do it anymore. And it's a matter of self-preservation for me. And I'm thinking of moving on. But you and we could do this." I mean, we have really, really beautiful balance of skill sets that we bring. And so he is more, tech oriented coding and design, and I am more conceptual and extroverted and people oriented. And so I really nurture all of our client relationships, and he does a lot of the brilliant behind the scenes work. But he was like, "We can do this. I believe in us." And it took a tiny nudge from him, but, at that point, I could have either said, well, see ya. I had worked at that company long before him and I could have continued to stay. But I saw that little crack, that door, right? That little light in that crack popping open. And I just decided, to push it open and walk through. And I went through all of the, worst case scenarios in my mind. And I just recognized that I don't think I have anything to lose here. What if it's
What if it goes great?
incredible beyond our wildest dreams? And so I have not looked back from that choice. I just I trusted myself. I trusted myself and realized that no matter what happened, that I would be okay.
Well, and that's a theme for you that I want to get into a little bit more. But first I'm recognizing that a lot of times when people are in this place in their lives where they're considering making a big change, they're in their heads, right? And so some of this wasn't intellectual discernment for you. You're analyzing, right? You're processing, you're thinking, you're imagining. But don't you think it's more of a heart gut decision too? Like you got to get past the thinking about it, and you have to check the deeper parts of self in order to, at least for me, I have to get to that place of clarity before I can make a decision or take a risk. Was it like that for you?
1,000,000%. Trusting my gut, trusting my intuition is something that was a big part of my life. And I think we'll get into that story the first time that came up for me. But I lost my way a little bit from listening to my gut and trusting my intuition. And when I finally came back to it, it felt like coming home to myself. And
Yeah.
now I let that lead so many of my decisions because our conscious mind is a tricky thing. It will tell us almost what we want to hear, it will rationalize. And, our brain is there to protect us, right? And the whole like fight or flight instinct. So it's going to try and be like, oh, that's new. That does not feel safe. But
Yes.
when we can take a breath and settle in and, trust our deeper knowing, then answers can arise that allow us to be a little braver, a little more bold, and understand that it is okay to take those risks.
Yeah. So the brain, there's so many things that we could talk about the brain, but the
Yep.
thing that's on my mind right now is that the brain is always going to look for evidence for what our thought is, like whatever that thought pattern is. So let's say it's the worst case scenario, it's thought, right? We're playing out, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? Our brain is going to look for the evidence to support that.
Yes.
And so it's like an intentional shifting or like looking around something from multiple lenses to say, okay, yeah, I see that, but what's the best thing that can happen? What's possible if this goes well? So the brain starts to look for what could go right. So back to the deeper parts, like the gut, the heart, the soul, spirit, whatever you want to call it. Can you talk about how you engage with your intuition at that stage so that people can start to maybe get familiar with how their intuition works too?
Sure. And, I will say, just pinging off of what you just mentioned about the brain looking for evidence, we have a choice. So even though we consciously recognize that we're going to that worst case scenario and the brain is looking for that through line, we also have the choice to look at the through line of evidence that's on the positive. So one of like the tactics that I, used then, that applies even now is I know that, for example, all of the clients that we had at that time at that business were from my relationships and my nurturing strong relationships and people's trust and involvement with me and how I showed up in the community at large. And so I was bringing all of the business in to that company. And so I knew that we could do that for ourselves as well, that I did not need, the structure of what we had there was nothing that was supportive that we couldn't do without. And it was someone who didn't value what I brought. And so it was up to me to protect that and be boundaried and say, I value myself. I believe in myself. I have evidence that I can, bring in clients and successfully work with companies. And we do beautiful work and we know what we're doing. And so if you can separate and, journaling's a great tool. I know in today's technology, people do audio stuff or they talk to their AI therapist or they, you know, type. But if you can, there's something that also triggers when you can put pen to paper that just starts surprising you that it will come out. That's a way to get into your intuition. And when you just start free writing about whatever you're thinking, you're going to realize how much of it, is within you. I mean, is that like a Wizard of Oz thing? It was within you all along. But it's true. I mean, that could be looked at as a story about intuition and trusting yourself and instead of, always looking outside for the answers, right? Recognizing that we have what we need.
I wanna just put an exclamation mark on that tool that you're mentioning because I find that writing things down, it our brain connects with that when we're writing with our hand differently than if we're typing or doing audio text. And what I have found is that when we write things down, it takes it from that spinning place in our head and it starts to make sense of it, but it also loses power.
Yes.
Or if it's something that's like, what am I afraid of? If I say, okay, this feels scary. What am I afraid of? And I write it down. It's like, well, that's overcomable. It's like, that's solvable. And so that's why I say it loses power. So that's a huge tool that we can all use when we're in the middle of anything that's significant or we're just sort of spinning in our heads.
Couldn't agree more. 100%. And, the financial I do a lot of work on my money story. I have a lot of subconscious limiting beliefs from childhood and how I was raised. And I've done a lot of work on getting my nervous system to sort of settle into, first of all, being comfortable with a certain level of financial success, but also feeling safe to know how much, privilege that I have. I mean, I get to choose the organic food. It's not like I've ever felt, risk of going hungry or not having a roof over my head. And sometimes I think we can forget and not that, we have to go around feeling like, "Oh, I'm lucky that I get to eat because some people in the world can't eat." I'm not saying that, but I'm saying sometimes our own worst case scenarios are like, not only am I fine, I'm like here from fine. There's all of this gain, right? And maybe I wanna be here, but, like, there's so much gratitude, and when you can lean into the gratitude and appreciation for all of the things that you have and recognize how deeply you are provided for by yourself or the universe or the world or whatever word you wanna use, then it almost makes taking some of those chances or leaning into your intuition feel safer.
Yeah. Yeah. I love to say, "It is well." Like, "It is
It
well."
is
Everything's
well.
and also, this is really powerful is to say, "I'm right where I need to be. I'm right where I'm supposed to be." Because we wanna rush through our journey, our probably wanna get to where we wanna go quicker. But in truth, we're all right where we're supposed to be, and all it takes is the very next brave step. That's it.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like something that I have to repeat to myself quite often is that it's not my job to figure out like the huge outcome over here, right? It's my job to just keep taking the next aligned step. And instead of like, how am I gonna? I mean, obviously, as business owners, we have projections and we have to lean into data and numbers, and this is my outcome and these are my goals. But when I get overwhelmed with how am I going to get X number of clients or X number of revenue by this date and all of that, that's not helpful in any way. But when I can celebrate one incredible connection call with somebody or one amazing client pitch at a time, then it's almost letting go and trusting and leaning into, I use the word universe. That's my connection to something bigger than me, but I trust that the universe has my back and that if I just keep leaning in and trusting that I'm doing, aligned, authentic actions that the outcome will come and not be so worried about this that I'm missing all of the steps prior. And so I really agree with your statement on that for sure.
So, let's talk more about the intuition.
Okay.
How did you it sounds like you trusted yourself maybe when you were younger, you kind of lost yourself, and now you've discovered it. For me, and I don't know, I haven't done an assessment, but I did I don't think I ever learned it until I was starting in my 30s to trust myself, and it's something I'm growing in more and more. But what was your story around trusting yourself?
Yeah. So the first time I think I really truly leaned into it, I lived in Manhattan when I graduated from college, and I just couldn't wait. I always wanted to live in the big city, and I was just, wide eyed, excited, believed I could accomplish anything, and was able to establish myself. Now, this was before before the internet, so I wasn't a web developer yet because there really wasn't websites yet. But I worked in publishing, and I had some phenomenal opportunities to work at Hearst and Condé Nast and life that many would envy. I had an incredible West Village apartment. I was wearing, high fashion clothes and living this fabulous life. And as I started tapping into my own spirituality and connection to myself and source and growth mindset is a term that we use, commonly today, or at least in circles like yours and mine, because that's sort of who we call in and who we like connecting with. But there didn't used to be that type of language quite as much, in the early 90s. And so, but that is what was happening. I was developing a growth mindset and starting to redefine success outside of materialistic things like a great job title or a great apartment. And so I had the opportunity to travel to Colorado. I had never been here before, and something magical happened. The connection to nature. They say there's like a beautiful curse in this area that once you come, you can't ever leave because it's just so spectacular. But something kept pulling at me that there was a different way of life. And so I went back to New York after that trip, but the wheels kept spinning. And something deep inside me, I just listened to my gut, and it didn't make sense on paper at all to leave my life there. I mean, I had a relationship and the apartment and the job and all of those things. And when I visualized what my life would be like there, when I looked at my boss who rode the train an hour and a half each way to work and had a big house upstate and had paid a nanny to raise his children and had this life, I was like, I do not aspire to be like that person. What am I even doing, and what do I want for myself? So I made a beautiful choice and chose me and trusted, and no matter what anybody said, I didn't care. Something in me told me this was the right choice, and I left all of that life behind. And I remember saying to myself, it's not going anywhere. It will be here, right? And I probably said that to myself when I started my own company. If it doesn't work out, I'll just go get a job. I mean, I'm resourceful. I'm going to figure it out. So that's what happened when I left New York. New York is not going anywhere. The jobs here aren't going anywhere. If it doesn't work out, I can come back. And you know what? It's been 26 years. So,
Amazing.
I mean, but
Well,
and when I say I lost connection with that for a while, I got married and started a family. I have, two children in their 20s, and I was actually married to their father for 20 years, who
was that in a New York relationship?
Colorado. When I
Started
moved
in
to
Colorado, okay.
Colorado, I met my now ex-husband. And so there were years during that, period when I sort of lost that connection to self.
What happened to why were you losing that connection?
Yeah. So my ex-husband is an alcoholic. And so being in a what I will call codependent alcoholic marriage slowly chipped away at me. And I didn't realize that, hindsight is 2020. So I can look back and articulate it way better than I could when I was sort of in the trenches. And so it just kind of snuck up on me slowly because, when we were all young, we were all, having a great time. And then, as we had children and I outgrew, having the cocktails and the letting loose and all of that sort of lifestyle that you have when you're, younger, and grew into, building a family and building a career and having, young children and everything. He kind of went the opposite direction. And so I was just very focused on the children and felt like I could, protect them better from within. I don't know if that was good or bad, but there was a lot of codependency happening for me. I loved him and thought I could, make it better. And so I stayed in that sort of constant fight or flight for many, many years where I just never knew what state of existence there would be when he got home every night. He is a professional chef, so there were late hours, and I never quite knew what, was happening, if he would come home drunk or sober, or what type of mood. And I just tried to hold it all together for everyone. And so I was not in a state of self-care physically or emotionally. And I was, focused on my daughters and focused on kind of keeping it all together for a long time.
And so and you're gonna share the transition because you kinda woke up, maybe. And so I'm curious, like, the age of you have 2 girls, right?
I do.
So what were their ages at this time that you're starting to realize, "I don't know that this is sustainable," and you talked about truth,
Yeah.
being honest, telling the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah, so when they were about 14 and 16, there were some hard truths that I just had to look at, that the gaslighting, the verbal abuse, and some things occurred that I could no longer turn the other cheek. And I recognized I was trying to kind of hold out until they were out of the house.
Sure.
But a couple of things happened that led me to, again, just lean into my intuition and be like, that's it. I draw the line in the sand. I choose me. I choose us. And this has to end right now. And I think something bigger was at play for me, because this was right before COVID. And so we did not spend COVID locked down with an alcoholic. So the girls opted to live with me full time. They were very aware of what was going on, and we had high levels of communication between us. And I, never wanted to make them feel like they couldn't still, spend half their time with their father if that's what they chose, and they chose not to. And so the three of us moved into our own space and had this like beautiful cathartic experience during COVID, where we, you know, were rewarded for trusting ourselves. I mean, they were like, it's about time. I was like, well, I was a little too close to it to see, and I thought I could protect better. And you know what? And here's something that I think would be helpful for your listeners, whether they're involved with an addict or whether they're thinking about it in business or any other way. What I did not see at the time, which I now see clearly, is this was the best thing for him too. Because when
Mm,
he lost his whole entire family, that was his rock bottom, and he is sober now.
yes.
It took that. Nothing short of that
It was good for him too.
forced his sobriety. And so he is 6 years sober. We are amicable co-parents. We can come together for our kids are adults now, they're in their 20s, but we can share their successes. We took them to college together. We shared their college graduations together. And we are still a family when it comes to our children and providing for them and communicating their best needs, even in their 20s. So it ended up being the best thing for him as well, even though that expression, I couldn't see the forest for the trees. And so sometimes, you know, it's not selfish to put ourselves first or trust ourselves, because we can't pour into others if our cup is empty. And I was bone dry. I had given all I had to give. And so by trusting myself and doing what was best for me, I was able to show up healthier for my children. And then ultimately, he was able to show up for himself and do some work that he really needed to do, and made some choices for himself that have turned out to be really wonderful.
So, were you aware that you had lost connection with yourself as you were at that point of leaving?
I recognized, I think I had that epiphany of, when did I stop trusting myself? When did I stop trusting I knew that I had to leave. I knew it for a long time. And I remember just saying, when did you stop trusting yourself and knowing? And even looking back at some of my journals from that period in time. And I was writing about it to myself. Like, I know that this is incredibly unhealthy, and I know that I can't go on like this, and I need to make change.
How did you know when the time was right for that change? Because there's a lot of people, it's not just you, right? It's your daughters, it was your husband. And so there were a lot of consequences to a decision like that.
Yeah.
What was it that happened that caused you to say, "It's time, it's now"?
There was a couple final straws. One was a family vacation where my father had already passed away and my mother was bringing us all together in California where my sister lived, and she was, treating the entire family to a wonderful trip together, and his drinking was at an all-time terrible level, and his behavior and his ability to function, really. And I told him that I didn't want him to come on the trip. I said, "You know what? I don't want you to come because it's embarrassing. And this is supposed to be a wonderful time to spend with family. And it's just, you're not up for it?" And so he, you know, did what he did many times and broke down and cried and promised to do better and be different, and said that this was his, he recognizes that something has to change and he promises he's going to change, and that he will not have a sip of alcohol on the trip and really wants to be with the family, and that he was ready to quit drinking. And so we went on the trip together, and he brought a bunch of shots, small little mini travel alcohol in his suitcase. And so without even looking for it, I quickly, he thought he could, I mean, it's obvious when someone's drinking, when you're around them and you know them that well. And so, he of course had not kept that promise. And then, some other promises that he had broken to me became evident during that trip. And so I held on until the day I made the decision on that trip. And I told my sister out loud. I divulged everything to her. I mean, she was, understood exactly what was going on because of past family vacations. She had seen it all in action for many years. And I said to her, "I'm telling you out loud so that someone's accountable. I'm accountable to myself, and you are my trusted companion. And I'm just telling you, like, the minute we land back in Colorado, I'm leaving him." And so I think somehow by committing to myself and then going to someone who I really trust, that I knew had my best interest at heart, and saying it out loud. And then when we got back, I did. I told him that it was over and that, he needed to leave. And he did, but had nowhere to go, had no friends, had no support system. And so then me and the girls left. And so we were blessed to have a lot of friends and who gave us safe places to stay until I could find us a place. And I did too, right? Like, that was just the trusting and the knowing, like, I'm going to figure this out. I don't have to have all the answers, but again, that taking one step of aligned action. So I found us an immediate safe place to stay in a friend's caretaker unit, and it was open for a month until they had family coming. So we stayed there with what we needed. And it was like the best feeling the first night sleeping there. And then I went and tried to find us a place to live. And it was, we were living at the time in a resort town, and there was limited housing available, but I just trusted that it was going to work out and we were going to find a place. And so I just kept looking, and we did. We found an awesome 3-bedroom. It was very important that for me that the girls each have their own space, their own room, to have a safe space for their own energy, their own feelings, their own, to like tuck away and be able to, deal with their own emotions. And then it was beautiful because we ended up spending COVID there. And so they had their own space and they could do their schooling there, and I could work from home there. And the three of us, actually, it ended up, even though it was a scary time for all of us in the world then, beautiful growth and expansion happened for us during that time.
So, what has happened since then? So, you made this major decision in your life to start over in some ways. And what has that journey been like for you personally since then?
Feel like it was like a rebirth. I feel like it was a coming back to myself. Just, it showed me once again that I could really trust myself and provide for myself and show up for myself, and that I'm resilient and that I can figure it out. I'm always going to be okay. I can figure it out. And so At that time, I already had my own company, and so we stayed in that mountain community and got the girls through high school, and they both graduated from there, and when they both went off to college, I moved down to what we call the Front Range, so I moved down to the Denver metro area from the mountains and bought my own place, and again, a three-bedroom home because I always felt like one of my daughters said to me so beautifully one time, I asked her, I think, if she missed her home, the childhood home where they had lived their whole life because my, ex-husband stayed there and we moved on. And she put her hand on my heart and said, "This is where my home is."
So beautiful.
So we built a new home here. And so it's a three-bedroom home where they both had their own spaces and now one of my daughters owns her own home with her
Close to
partner.
me.
So close to you. Um so I just turned her room into my office recently. You know, Proving to myself that I could overcome that was, character building, and it made me even trust myself more, but it also reminded me how important it was to not lose sight of that. Everywhere you go, there you are. And one one other lots of expressions, but one other expression that I really love is you are the love of your life. So if you're not loving yourself, other people can't love you to the best of, their ability if you're not loving yourself. And so I spent a couple of years doing all the work on myself, emotionally, physically, leaning into some of that self-care routine that I talked about at the opening and understanding that if I'm taking care of me and I am coming from this healthy, amazing place, then I just have so much more overflow to give to the people that I love. And so my children are both thriving in their own lives and communities where they live, and the business is growing. I mean, we are having challenges like a lot of businesses right now economically, but I trust in myself and my business partner, and we'll always figure it out. And then I'm in a wonderful, new, loving, romantic relationship with a man that I was able to really come in knowing what my core values are, what I want out of a relationship, what I choose in a relationship, to build a partnership that's really, really aligned and something that I never knew could exist at this level. So that's also really beautiful.
So curious about what your daughter said. Like you moved really quickly past that really powerful statement that she made.
I
My
know.
heart, my heart is your heart. My heart is within you.
Yes.
What or my home is within you. What was it that you did in your life to create an environment where your daughter believes that, lives that?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. There was a long time I couldn't say that without crying because it's just so beautiful and
How
special.
beautiful.
Both of my daughters, what I have instilled from them in them their whole life, even when we were struggling with their dad, I worked really hard to be open and honest with them and allow them to see what was happening around them without parentifying because it wasn't their job to fix it. It wasn't their job to fix me or save me. I'm the parent. I'm here. I protect you. I show up for you, but I wasn't masking the truth. So they saw their father's disease. They saw him suffer. They saw him make bad choices. They saw me make bad choices. I was, honest with them about what was going on once they were old enough to sort of understand alcoholism. And by no means was I perfect. I made plenty of mistakes that I, would do differently, just, probably would have left it in different timing and all of that. But again, everything happens, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I needed to get that low to see. And, maybe if they had been younger and he had gotten partial custody, he would not have gotten sober. Right. And so, if they were not old enough to have a voice and be like, "No, we don't want to live with you because of your behavior." So, everything worked out the way it was supposed to, but I have nurtured a relationship with them that is built on trust and openness and vulnerability and always have encouraged them to really check in with themselves and be the truest version of them. One story is one of my daughters, they both were really into sports, and there was one season that she did not make the volleyball team due due to a coach that was, maybe a little harsh or not her ideal person. And, we honored the sadness and the loss about not making that team. And then we talked about how to handle there may be roommates or teachers or bosses or other people who you come across in life who maybe don't do the right thing or don't make choices in a loving, kind, educated way that you would have them make them. And so how do you build resilience and how do you handle that? And so the way it worked was there was like the school team and then there was the club team.
Yeah.
And so when club tryouts came along, she, was really apprehensive about trying out. And I remember saying to her, does that person decide that you're a volleyball player? Or do you decide that you're a volleyball player? You decide. You get to decide. So are you? Are you a volleyball player? Are you someone who wants to play volleyball? And she's like, I really love it. I really want to. And so that I think would have been a really resilient memory for her in a time that she had to be brave and strong. It's hard as a kid to be left out or not make the team. And so not only did she try out for club, she crushed it. She got moved up to the top team after a couple games because she is an awesome volleyball player. And I think there was something, I think she just didn't get along with that coach
Yeah.
at the time of the tryouts was right when we had just moved out and we're going through our separation. So she had a lot of personal emotional stuff
Yeah.
happening. And so I was so thrilled that she, took that opportunity to be brave and have resilience and do it. And it paid off. And that was, her learning and exercising that muscle of like, I can do this. I can advocate for myself. I get to choose. And it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. And so,
You
and
raised lionesses.
I did. And then you know what? Next school year, and she tried out again for that same coach and she made the team.
This courage.
Yeah. Yes. So I think
When do you remember being the first time you had to express your lioness energy?
I am going to say when I went to college, I think, because in high school, I grew up in a town where I was a little bit different than everybody. I grew up in upstate New York and I'm just, I'm Jewish. I've got this big curly hair. I've got this really gregarious personality. And I went to this school that was sort of a little more preppy and a little more homogenous. And I just was super into fashion. So I just dressed really funky and different than everybody. And I just didn't technically fit in. I had my own sort of, random friend group. But some people have these just amazing high school memories of, being on whatever team or whatever squad or having their greatest friend group or whatever. And I struggled a lot socially in high school. And I got really good grades and did well academically, but I just didn't, I knew there was something more in me. I'm like, these aren't my people. I'm not being recognized or I don't feel connected to people like I know that I should be. And so when I went to college, I decided who I was going to be. I decided that I was going to seek out the type of friendships I wanted and that I was going to seek out the social life I wanted. And I made that happen. I literally, pushed my comfort zone and, just I made it happen for myself and I had the best time and the best friends and the best experiences and still to this day I have amazing friendships that I created during that time and I know that I made that happen for myself. I was not
What
going to just,
what rose up in you? What was the catalyst for you making that intentional decision of you're going to do college differently?
yeah, it sounds strange, and I don't know that I've ever actually put this into words, but as you're asking me this, and we've been talking so much about our intuition and our inner knowing, I feel like I just knew that I was like meant for more, right? And I don't want to lean into, it's such like a high school term to be like popular or whatever. Didn't mean popular like I needed recognition from other people, but just alignment, right? Like just being recognized for my best version of self and having people who celebrate me that I could also celebrate. Just having a big group of aligned friends who celebrated me, that we could do it for each other, like my first sisterhood, you know?
Well, and so I want to talk about the expanders because this is how you've lived your life and you're living it now. So tell us about what expanders are.
Yeah. So for me, an expander is someone who encourages you to be the best version of yourself, and through doing that shows you what's possible, right? So like here's a really common example that people can identify with. If you play a sport or like I ski, when I ski with someone who's better than me, I ski better and faster and keep up with them and have like a better day maybe on the slopes than if I'm the best skier in the group. It's a much different dynamic than if so I like surrounding myself with people who inspire me, who are successful in business, who share, my aligned values, who inspire me to be an even better version of myself. Or so, some people, right? Like a shift I've made in my current life that maybe I wasn't wise enough to know when I was way younger is if when you feel jealousy or envy about somebody, all that really is that's an expander. That's a mirror. That's an opportunity. Instead of feeling jealous of that person, look at them and go, "Oh my gosh, if she has that, I can have that. How amazing is that? How do I tap into this person? How do I connect with them to sort of up level, right?" And
Yeah.
so for me, expanders are people who, lead with their heart, who are tapped into their intuition, who inspire me to be the best version of myself and, you know, push me to want to be better. So I don't know. Is that how you look at it too?
Love it. Recently, what I've been saying, and I'm connecting this with your word expander, is there are people in my life who call me higher. And they do it in my own vision. Like I'll share a vision with them. I'll share something that I'm working on or something in my life, and they will put some context around it and call out things that I hadn't seen in myself yet, but they'll elevate that vision for me so then I can see it. And there are specific people in my life this year that are doing that. And I'm so thankful for them. I need them because I'm limited in my thinking. I'm limited in my imagination. And so they will call out things that elevate my own understanding of self, my own vision, even my own understanding of what I'm doing in the world. It's like, oh, it does matter. I am doing those things, but they call me higher.
Yes, I love that. They call you higher. Exactly right. And I visualize like an expander, right? Helps you
Yes,
expand. And so
that's
calling
exactly
you
what it
higher,
does.
it's like exactly that. And so
Well,
I really love it.
so what I don't think I've ever shared on the podcast is that kind of logistics. I always have these lioness women like you complete a form. It's a lioness form, and it gives me all this information, and it gives me the foundation for knowing more about your story and having this conversation. One of the things you shared in there is about, one of the questions I ask is basically like, who has been the biggest influence in your life, or who are the people that have helped you along your journey? And you had something really interesting to say. I've never heard anybody say it like this, but you said, I had to seek out my help. I actively sought out people in my life to help me. And so you talked about, therapists and friends. And so will you talk about that? Because sometimes I think people, especially in this day and age, feel really isolated, feel pretty set apart, lonely, disconnected. So it may be helpful for them to hear. How have you gone about finding your people?
Yeah. So I think it's twofold. I think one thing is remembering that everybody is scared. We are all scared. We're all scared to walk into a room. I've been doing a lot of networking. So I moved to a new community 2 years ago. And, we went from having a brick and mortar office in a town where we knew everybody. And my business partner moved to Fort Collins. I moved to Denver and we converted to home offices. And So I was going into rooms where I didn't know anybody, networking events, other social settings. Everyone is afraid. So if you are just the first person to walk up to people, I would just walk up to people who looked like they were maybe a close knit group of friends having a conversation and say, "Hello, I'm new here. And I just wanted to say hi." People welcome you. Everyone's afraid. So it goes both ways, right? Now that I'm more established in some of these networking groups, if I see somebody who looks shy or nervous walking in, I'll go out of my way to be like, "Are you new here?" I think just recognizing that we are all in it together. And also, conversely, when I had the strength to leave my marriage, I suddenly had a lower tolerance for other things that were not aligned. So I was able to take a hard look at some of my other relationships. And that was with a couple friends and a couple clients who just didn't share, you and I had talked about core values, who maybe didn't share my core values or who were not in alignment with my life. I'm not saying I stop being friends with, people are allowed to be going through a hard time. And I'm all in to support friends who are in alignment with me when they're having a hard time. And I recognized that there were a couple people that I was sort of just friends with out of obligation who weren't kind or giving or loving or supportive or trustworthy or bring in the qualities that I really have worked so hard to nurture. And so I was like, I don't need to give energy to this relationship. I am not obligated either to work with clients who don't value our expertise. And one of the things I realized, kind of like when I said it was better for my ex-husband in the long run too, because he ended up getting sober, what I have recognized is maybe I'm freeing up that friend to find a better friend for them. Maybe
Could
they have somebody who they're more aligned with. So instead of making it your burden, trust that sometimes it's for the higher good and it's good for everyone. And then when you, again, are staying more aligned with yourself and your own true values, not only will you be ready to attract the right fit people, but you have nothing to lose in reaching out to find those people in your life. And so if you need help, you can ask for help, be it a therapist or a different type of, coach, energy worker, whatever. I mean, I always say, could I do my own taxes? I could, but it does not bring me joy. It is not my zone of genius. So I would rather hire an accountant to do that. I use that line with clients about web development, but we can be proud and open about doing that with our emotional well-being. If you don't know how to use the gym, you hire a personal trainers. Hiring people to help us with our, you know, emotional and spiritual growth is should be equally open and accessible, and be proud of that, but through just being super open at these networking groups and super excited. Even you and I like met on LinkedIn and then had a conversation just, to see if we were in alignment for me to come on the podcast, and we like became fast friends
Yep.
just from being open and talking. So don't be afraid, to talk to people or compliment people. Have you ever noticed if you're even online to go to the restroom in an event and you say to the woman in front of you, like, "I love your shoes." Who doesn't like a compliment for a choice
Love it.
they've made? And say
Or just
it
say
if you
thanks
think
and say
it, just to feel seen, acknowledged, spread the love a little bit.
totally. I want to talk about attraction because I think there, and it goes back to what you said about we don't always have to figure out the how. I think the how paralyzes us and holds us back.
Mm,
And we're never going to know the full plan.
yeah,
We can try, but
yeah.
we're never going to know the full plan. And what I find is that if we are clear about what it is that we need, if we're clear on our lack, meaning this is an area that I need to grow in. This is a need that I have, and I need to access this. When we are aware of what our needs are and we're open to receiving it, things and people come.
Yes.
Mhm. And it's like opening ourselves up to the possibility of having our needs met so that when it comes, we can see it.
Yes. Yes. And And taking that one step further, being honest enough with ourselves to let our own guard down about
Yeah,
maybe where we are either suffering or not amazing at something or whatever, right? Like
true.
when I have a lull in my business, I don't say, well, I mean, I'm working super hard and I'm doing all this outreach to find clients. I say to myself, okay, where am I resistant that I could shift? Or are there opportunities that I'm not leaning into in the best way? Or being open to that reflection from either my business partner or my romantic partner, and being open because I want to be the best version of myself. And so, getting defensive or not being willing to take constructive, loving criticism only hurts you also because, you know, sometimes other people can see things clearly with a little distance. And so I love that level of feedback from people. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, if a client says no to me, I lean into it as an opportunity. Like maybe we just weren't aligned and they'll find somebody who's more. But I also like to ask, like, okay, that's cool. For my client journey, it's super helpful for me to understand why you made that choice.
Yeah.
And it's never what we think. We make up a story sometimes, like, oh, it was the money, or I didn't do the right thing in my pitch, or whatever. And it could, more often than not, it's never what I think it is. And so being curious
Totally.
is a great
Yes.
quality.
It's a great quality.
And for growth mindset, especially, you have to be curious.
Definitely. Definitely. So, speaking about the lioness, so I define the lioness as feminine strength, grace, and power. And you said something that I want to share and have you expand on it. It really, it just spoke to me. You said it taught me, you're talking about making this big decision, transition in your life. It taught me that feminine strength isn't soft or loud, it's clear. It's the quiet conviction to say, this isn't working. I deserve better. I love that. Feminine strength isn't soft or loud, it's clear. So, and you've talked about clarity, like you do a lot of clarity in your work, helping people get super clear. Tell me about clarity. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. I think, again, using the word curious again, I think in order to be clear, we have to be willing to sit in the quiet, to get curious, to be vulnerable, to let the guard down, and to really be honest with ourselves first. Because I think often, I've been guilty over time of having what I will call masculine energy, right? Which is reactive and louder and jumping to whether it's like defend or on the offense. And what I've realized is when I do take a breath, slow down, contemplate, and come from a place of deeper knowing, I am a clear communicator. I am clear on my intention, and then we end up with better results, right? And I
Yeah.
think one of the things that I try to bring to my work all the time is I don't know when it had to be so separate that, like, this is who we are personally and this is who we are in business. Like, I throw that out the window. I do not care. You shouldn't have to keep, all of your personal parts of yourself, pushed down during work. I mean, yes, you can be a professional human being, but who I am is who I am everywhere. And
Yeah.
so that clarity either makes me for people or not for people. And
Hmm.
so that's is truly authentically what I try to dig out of my clients because that's how they can stand out in the marketplace. If there are, 20 people in a room who do what they do, I want to help them distinguish. And that has to come from who we are.
And clarity brings confidence. When we're clear ourselves, then we can be clear with others and we can show up more powerfully because we're not questioning who we are. What are we doing? Am I doing it right? It's like,
Yeah.
no, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what's important to me in the world. And this is what you can expect when you get me.
And it's okay to sometimes say, you know what? I'm really not sure. let me think about that. Let me sit with that and get back to you, right? Or I don't know all the answers just because I have clarity. And that I think encourages confidence as well. Just the truth.
Mhm. Truth. Yeah. Well, Leslie, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I know that others are gonna gain a lot from what you've shared and the tools that you've talked about and just the journey that you've been on. I know that listeners are gonna resonate with because we all have been there in these situations that are uncertain. We wanna take big risks. We're, learning how to trust our intuition more so that we can live the fullness of life that we're designed for. How can people find you and connect with you?
Yes. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me and for creating a safe container for me to be able to show up so authentically and vulnerably with you. I really appreciate it. And my website is hive180.com. And lately, socially, I've been hanging out on LinkedIn a lot. So Leslie Silverman on LinkedIn and also on Instagram. So any one of those three ways, my website, my Instagram, or my LinkedIn. And I just love connecting with new people all of the time. So reach out, say hi, and if this has helped you in any way, I'm so glad.
And who would be an ideal client for you?
So I say I like to work with certified professionals who want to break away from their industry status quo. And so I've worked with lots of consultants, lawyers, doctors, accountants. People in the sort of fractional space right now is a huge, industry trend where people are maybe offering fractional CFO, CMO services, but need a personal brand to establish themselves independently. And then, I also have a ton of experience working with larger companies, nonprofits, and the like. So if you are curious, I'm always excited just to have a get to know you call to see if there's alignment.
I love it. And I love that you have a buzz. Is it called a buzz call?
A
When
brand buzz is our
brand buzz
strategy
call. I
session.
love that. I love this language around your business and what you do and how you help people.
Thank
Well, check Leslie out, connect with her on LinkedIn, go to her website, hive180.com, and check out what she's doing and reach out. I mean, Leslie's put it out there. She's ready to have a conversation. She loves meeting new people. So thank you so much, Leslie, for being here and sharing your story and being brave and courageous and inspiring us to do the same.
Thanks, Jen. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All right. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Feel free to share some feedback. If you have a lioness and someone whose story should be highlighted and elevated through this podcast, reach out to me and let me know. In the meantime, the lioness in me sees the lioness in you.